Hey everyone, welcome to Evidence of Easter, where we're looking at 5 different historical discoveries that point to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And we're doing it this week leading up to Easter so that our celebration this weekend would be more meaningful and more real and more impactful for each of us. Today, we're looking at number 5. In 2009, some construction workers on the west coast of the Sea of Galilee were clearing land to build a luxury hotel right there on the water. And as they began to clear the land, they came across some ruins that would later be identified as the ancient fishing village of Magdala. Now, if Magdala sounds familiar, it may be because of one of Jesus's followers, Mary Magdalene. And Magdalene was not her last name. That was an identifier for her. There was a lot of Marys that lived in that day. And so they would have qualifiers. Well, which Mary are you talking about? And so Mary Magdalene was Mary Magdalene, Mary the Magdalene, Mary from Magdala. And you may know that she not only was a part of the Gospels throughout Jesus' teaching and ministry, but she also was the very first one to discover that the tomb was empty on Easter morning. She went first, early in the morning, right as the sun was coming up, and there was no body there. And she went back, told the other disciples. They thought at the time that the body had been stolen. And this discovery was her hometown. This was the town she grew up in. This is the town that Jesus would have frequented many, many times. And one of the most powerful parts of the discovery of the village of Magdala is this right here. What you're looking at is a synagogue from the time of Jesus. This has been dated to the 1st century. And this is one of the most well-preserved synagogues from that time. Most of the synagogues from the 1st century were destroyed by the Romans when they came through in the late 60s. They destroyed everything in their path. And so this synagogue is special for that reason, that it's so intact. If you look, you can see the mosaic floor in the foreground. And in the background, you can see a rectangular-shaped kind of courtyard area. And this is where rabbis would sit on those stones, and their followers would gather around them as they taught. And so as you look at this synagogue, this was a synagogue that Jesus would have taught in. Matthew says this in chapter 4, verse 23, says, Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. Later in chapter 9, Matthew says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. So we start here, the synagogue in Magdala, as the first evidence of Easter, because you can't really tell the story of Jesus' resurrection without talking about the life and the teaching and the ministry that ultimately led to his crucifixion. The way he taught about the kingdom of God, the way he invited everyone to follow him was extraordinary. And as you think about those stones that Jesus sat on to teach, imagine yourself there. And imagine that Jesus is teaching, and as he looks around the room, his eyes meet yours. What does his face look like? What is his countenance towards you today? What is he thinking as he thinks about you? We'll see you next time on Evidence of Easter.